Hey everybody, welcome to the Conscious Love Show. Whether you are single, you are in a relationship, or you're healing a broken heart, this show is here to inspire you, to remind you how beautiful, lovable, and amazing you truly are, and to give you the practical tools and insights to navigate from wherever you are right now to the loving relationship that you so deeply want to have. My name is Shane Kohler. I'm a certified transformational coach and trainer with over a decade experience helping people release their trauma and open their hearts to love. I've delivered seminars all over the world, coached thousands of people through my online platforms and programs, and every week I'm coming straight to you with the hottest insights and the best teachers around, bringing you powerful resources and profound conversations to heal your relationship with love, dating, and yourself. I'm so grateful you're here, and if it's your first time, welcome. You can count on me to always show up for you with my very best and a commitment to learn and grow myself so I can serve you to my maximum ability. Thanks so much for tuning into the show. I've got some awesome things planned for you today. So without further ado, let's dive in. All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Conscious Love Show. Shane Kohler here. Pleasure to be on with you today, as always. And in today's episode, we're talking about going from casual to committed and bridging the gap to long-term love. So I was thinking about today's episode just because I wanted to kind of bring it back to basics a little bit and talk about some of the foundational things on this journey to create conscious love. And in today's episode, I'm really going to talk about what is the process moving from a string of casual relationships to a long-term committed relationship, or what is the process moving from, maybe you're dating and you feel like you're hitting a dead end over and over and over again, or maybe you get involved with someone and you think like, oh, well, it's finally going somewhere. It's finally going to work out. It's finally going to happen. And then it crashes and burns, right? Or maybe any and all of the above. But there's a very distinct process which we go through in creating conscious love. And many of us, I know from the clients I coach, I know from my own journey, I know from my wife's journey, and I see it so much, is that so many of us feel stuck in a never-ending cycle of kind of casual relationships, or even when something seems like it's becoming less casual, right? It seems like, oh, it's finally taking off. It's finally happening. Maybe it's going to go somewhere. And then it doesn't, right? And so we feel like maybe we're starting over again and again and again. So if you find yourself in any of these positions, or if you find yourself asking like, when is it going to happen, or why isn't it happening? Today's episode is for you. Because what I really want to talk about in today's episode is the journey from casual to committed, the journey from, this kind of never-ending dating scenario to finally creating that long-term committed partnership and being able to settle into it and trust that it's going to be there long-term, right? Being able to have that confidence that this isn't going anywhere, that I've found my person, that we are building a life together. This isn't something I'm going to get excited about and then be let down about. And what is the process that each of us must go through to transition from this kind of never-ending casual situation to something long-term committed, where you have a life partner, where you have that person who is by your side and has your back, and you can trust and you can rely on them and you can count on it to be there for years to come. And so today's episode is really going to be about diving into that journey and everything included in that. And I want to start by saying there are really two journeys. There's the internal journey and the external journey. And so many of us are focused on the external journey and neglecting the internal journey. But I think it's important to first understand that the external is always going to be a reflection of the internal. The external is always going to show you and reveal to you where you're operating from internally. And so if you're wondering, why isn't it happening yet? What am I missing? Why can't I figure this thing out? I go on date after date after date. Well, maybe the thing to do is to stop looking at the external so much and start looking at the internal. I recently did an interview with a woman named Stephanie, and Stephanie's amazing. I love her. She's awesome. She's a graduate of the Inspired Love program. And when she was in the program, her now partner, that I'm not going to spoil the surprises because I'm actually going to release Stephanie's interview on the podcast in a couple of weeks. So I don't want to spoil the surprises, but let me just say that she has had one of the most magical, miraculous journeys I have ever witnessed. In week 10 of the program, her partner calls her up. Her now partner calls her up and says, "Hey, I want to come visit you." It's funny. I often tell people that, if you want to find someone, you can't just sit on your couch and wait for them to come to you. You got to be out in the world. You got to be connecting. And in Stephanie's case, that was actually wrong. Her partner literally called her up and said, "Hey, I want to come visit you." And so as I was reflecting on Stephanie's journey and this interview I did the other day and all the lessons that were a part of, her process, she's one of the perfect examples of someone who really prioritized the inner journey. And I'm going to share a little bit about her story today, but I don't want to spoil it too much because I'm going to actually release her interview here in a couple of weeks. And I want you all to listen to it for yourselves and experience the magic firsthand. But what I'm getting at is that the external is always going to be a reflection of the internal. Whatever you experience in your external world, in terms of the types of people you attract, the types of people you're attracted to, the types of relationships you get involved in, what you accept, what you don't accept, who you fall in love with or who you can't fall in love with. Like all of this is a reflection of where you're coming from internally. And so many of us are just trying to meet someone and get on with it already, that all of our attention is external and none of our attention is internal. And I think something that I know I did, something that I know my wife did, talking about Stephanie, right? She'll share when you hear her interview, she'll share exactly that something she did. And I think I see it with so many of, if not all of my clients, is that something that needs to happen is at some point in the process, we've got to trust that the external thing is going to take care of itself. Meeting the right person at the right time in the right place when it's supposed to happen, when we're ready for it, when they're ready for it, right? Like that's going to take care of itself as long as I do the important work on myself. And that can be hard to accept because, as I just said, we have this idea and I'm guilty of it too, right? That you can't just be sitting on your couch waiting for it to show up. And I think there is truth to that. I'm not saying you actually can sit on your couch and wait for it to show up. Like, I think there is truth to that, but some amount of sitting on your couch, some amount of staying home, some amount of reflecting internally, and like some amount of just saying like, listen, I'm going to meet the right person at the right time in the right place when I'm ready for it, when they're ready for it. And I know that's going to happen. So the most important thing for me to do is to focus on my readiness and really figure out what it truly means to be ready for a conscious relationship. Figure out what it truly means to be attracted to the kind of people that are going to also be attracted to me, and to be attracted to somebody who is healthy and secure and loving and consistent, and to not chase love anymore. Right? But to actually be in love and live in love and let the relationship that I manifest show up in my life as a reflection of the love that I'm operating from in my life day in and day out. And so in today's episode, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the internal journey. I'm going to talk about the important steps on the internal journey. And then I'm going to talk about how we translate that externally. Right? Once we are ready, once we've done the important work, once we are ready for that conscious relationship, how do we bring that into the external world? What does dating and love look like from a conscious perspective? And the first thing I want to touch on when we talk about the internal journey, and let me just say this, like some of you, if you're listening to this right now and you want a conscious relationship and you've wanted it for a long time and you've been trying and maybe you've been on the dating apps or you've been having your friends set you up with people or you're going to church or you're going out to community events trying to meet people, whatever, like if you are actively engaged in that and you being actively engaged in that feels exhausting, it feels stressful, it feels like, oh my God, when is this ever going to end? Right? If that is your experience of it, then I just want to start with this idea is that you live in a universe that is made out of love. And you live in a universe that ultimately wants you to be happy. and you forcing yourself to do something that you hate, that sucks, that is exhausting, that makes you miserable, that makes you feel insecure, just to hopefully get something you want down the road, is not in alignment with the truth of who you are or the truth of the universe we live in. And so if that's how you're approaching it, and if that's how it feels for you, just start by acknowledging that you're out of alignment with even attracting the love you want, because that's not what attracting love feels like. That's what attracting dysfunctional relationship feels like. That's what attracting desperation and desperate type situations feels like. But attracting true, real, authentic love doesn't feel that way. And so if you're caught up in that, I just want to start by saying, give yourself permission to take a break. Give yourself permission to just relax. Give yourself permission to believe that it can happen in a different way. And if you give yourself that permission to believe that it could happen in a different way, and then you can just put on hold all the strategies that you think, if I do X, Y, and Z, it's going to happen, right? If I do this, if I go on 1 date a week, if I go to church every week, if I like whatever, right? If I just do all these things, it's going to happen. Like, give yourself permission to take a break on that and focus on yourself first. And trust that in putting the focus on yourself and in prioritizing what is truly, truly, truly important, that's going to create a kind of miraculous transformation in your life in which so much more will become available than you ever thought possible. And I know that might sound like maybe it's too good to be true, or you might struggle to accept that, but I'd say just try it out and find solace in the fact that the way you've been doing it hasn't been working. Right? Like if this hasn't worked, then maybe it's time to just try something else just to see how it could work. So I want to start with that. And I think one of the biggest obstacles that we struggle with, and I know like I went through this for many years, and I know my wife has been through this, and I know I coach my clients on this on a weekly basis, right? Where this is something that so many of us struggle with, is the feeling that being single is a problem that needs to be fixed. Or not having that relationship in your life is a problem that needs to be fixed. And as you're listening to this, just check in, like, be honest with yourself. Is that how you feel about it? If you're in that position, is that how you feel about it? Because that could not be farther from the truth. And I often say, like, when I'm coaching my clients, I'm like, you want to actually enjoy this time. You want to soak this time up, because one day you're going to meet your life partner and it's going to be over. And all this going wherever you want, doing whatever you wanted, traveling on a whim, like all of that, that's not going to be the case anymore. Like, your life is going to change. You're going to be living in partnership with someone. And that's a beautiful experience. I'm not saying there's anything negative about that, but it's not more beautiful than having the opportunity to live your life completely on your own terms. They're both equally beautiful. They're just different. And when you complete one experience, you move to the next. But a lot of the reason you may not be moving to the next, even though you want to, is because you haven't completed your current experience. You see, I truly believe that the universe works like this. It's like we are given something. I like to preface this when I talk about the Bible or Jesus, because I'm not a traditional Christian in that sense, and I don't necessarily subscribe to those ideals. But I do think that, Jesus is one of the greatest teachers, if not the greatest teacher in history. And I think some of the lessons he taught are just the most profound lessons we have. And I often think of the parable of the talents, if anybody remembers the parable of the talents. And the parable of the talents goes like this, where three men were given one talent, one which was a piece of money. And 3 men were given one talent, and they were told to go out and do something with it. When my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer, we started making a lot of changes to our lifestyle. And one of the most important changes we made was cutting out coffee. We didn't realize it at the time, but even 1 cup of coffee a day can flood your body with stress hormones and keep you in a consistent state of fight or flight, which we now know is not only a very uncomfortable way to live, but is also a ripe condition for disease to occur. Some of the best coffee substitutes we found were matcha green tea and adaptogenic mushrooms. And these are so amazing because they can offer many of the same benefits that coffee offers while also helping to regulate your nervous system and adding incredible health benefits. And if you would like to try this for yourself, we've teamed up with this incredible conscious ethical company called RYSE. And by using the code ShaneK15, you can save 15% on your entire order. So go ahead, check it out. I know you're going to love it. It's going to taste great. It's going to make you feel even better. And I can't wait to see what you think of it. So check it out in the description below wherever you're listening to this episode, and lots of love. The first man went and squandered it. So he partied and drugs and alcohol and women and whatever, and he squandered it all away. The second man buried it in the ground. He was afraid, he didn't want to lose it, so he buried his talents in the ground. The third man invested it and made more and became very wealthy using that one talent. And then many years later, they came back to the person who gave them the talents and they were asked, well, what did you do with this, right? And so the one person said, well, I squandered it. The second person said, well, I buried it and I dug it up last week and I have it right here. And then the other person said, I invested it and now I have millions and all this stuff. The way the story goes is it says the person who actually did the worst of the three was the one who buried it. You'd think, well, the one who did the worst was the one who squandered it. No, actually not, because that person got experience, but the person who buried it got nothing. The talent they were given, they did nothing with it, right? And so that story has always been so profound for me when I think about it, because thinking about we are given something. And yeah, of course, you don't want to squander what you're given, but even squandering it is better than doing nothing with it, right? We're given something and we are supposed to do something with what we're given. And so whatever is in your life right now, whatever cards you've been dealt, that is what you've been given. And your role in this season of your life, in the stage you're in, wherever that might be, whether you judge it as good, bad, or indifferent, your role in this season of your life is to make the absolute most of what you've been given. And when you make the absolute most of what you've been given, you will be given more. And so if that looks like inviting in that conscious love that you're seeking, if that looks like inviting in wealth, if that looks like inviting in whatever, right, that you will be given more. If you're single right now, and I think this conversation could apply to so many things, but just for simplicity's sake, I'm going to stick to this casual to committed conversation. And if you're single right now and you feel like my singleness is a problem that needs to be fixed, you are not getting the most out of the talents you've been given. You are either squandering your talents or you're burying them in a hole, but you're not investing them and allowing them to grow and become more. From that perspective, if you were to think that wherever I am right now in my life, this is a season of my life where I have been given an incredible amount of gifts, and I've been given whatever your gifts are, and everybody's gifts are different, right? But you've been given your brilliance, you've been given your joy, you've been given the job you have, the friendships you have, the hobbies you have, the interests you have, the intelligence you have, the creativity you have, and on and on and on. Whatever you have, that's what you've been given. And when you make the absolute most of that, it will increase, it will multiply, and it will become more. And so think about what really getting the most out of your life as it is now looks like. And I just want to share a little bit from my own experience, because I want to be very clear here that I'm not preaching about this as though I've never been there. Because I remember a time in my life, and I'm not proud to admit this, it's not how I like to think of myself, but I was desperate for a relationship. And the reason I was desperate for a relationship was because I felt like my life sucked. And I mean, in reality, it kind of did. And like my story's a little bit different than others, but I got out of jail at 20 years old and I had nothing to my name and not much going on in my life. I was working some shitty little job to barely make ends meet and just trying to, keep my head above water. And that was my reality. That was my life. That was what I was living. And in that reality, the best thing I could possibly hope for was for somebody to love me. Because that is something that would bring some light and some life and some joy and some excitement and some interest and some sex and some passion and someone to go out and have a good time with and all these things, right? And in the absence of all of that, life felt very empty. Life felt very dull. And so it was perfectly natural for me to just crave something outside of myself to come into my life and make it better. And I thought at that time, if I could just get a good relationship, if I could just fall in love with someone and they could love me back and we could be happy together and I could work my shitty little job and I could live my little life that wasn't very big, but as long as I had that would make it better. And there were a couple of things I didn't understand in that. One, I didn't understand that I was meant to have a much bigger life. I was meant to have a much more fulfilling life. And if I had gotten that conscious, loving relationship at that time, it would have stunted my growth because I wouldn't have become the person I am. So that was one thing I didn't understand. Another thing I didn't understand was if I had gotten that relationship at that time, that relationship would not have made my life better, but I would have made that relationship worse. You see, that relationship wouldn't have come into my life and suddenly made everything amazing. No, it wouldn't have happened. What would have happened is that relationship would have come into my life. It would have been amazing for a period of time, but then I would have made that relationship look the way the rest of my life looked. And why would I have done that? Because that's what I did with everything. Because we can only experience our life as we are. Whatever comes into our life, we can only experience it as we are. And so if you're in any kind of situation right now, and I'm using the example of being single and wanting a relationship, maybe you're in a job that you hate and you want to make more money and do something more fulfilling. Maybe it's something else for you. But if you're in any position right now where you're feeling like what you're in is a problem that needs to be fixed, the invitation for you here is to ask yourself, what's the opportunity? How can I make the most of what I've been given so that the universe sees that I'm ready for more? How can I demonstrate my gratitude and my appreciation for what I already have so that the universe sees fit to give me more? Rather than resenting or complaining about what I have and wanting something to come and make it better. So that's the first thing. Now, I want to talk specifically about some of the particular lessons and some of the ways that being single is truly a gift, and some of the ways that we work with that season of our life to become ready for a conscious relationship. And I think one of the most powerful things that we do in that season of our life is that we learn to be with our emotions and love ourselves. Right? During that season of our lives, we learn to be with our emotions and we learn to love ourselves. I think that's something that I'm not saying that it doesn't happen when you're in a relationship. Like, of course, you can learn to be with your emotions and you can learn to love yourself in a relationship. But if you haven't, at least to a strong degree, learned to do that on your own, then you're not going to learn to do it in the relationship. And the reason is because when you enter a relationship, I'll say without that skill set or without that knowledge, when you enter a relationship without that, what happens is that the relationship starts to consume you. It starts to become your everything, and all of your attention starts to be put on that person. And it starts to be like, what do I have to do to make them happy? What do I have to do to keep the relationship? there tends to be a certain level of subordinating your truth in order to accommodate for the relationship. And so if you don't enter a relationship with that strong emotional regulation, having been with my loneliness, having been with my feelings of despair, having been with my feelings of hopelessness, having had those nights alone in bed where I just felt so lonely and so depleted and just wishing someone was there with me and not having anyone or anything to reach out to and having to learn how to comfort myself in those moments. Not having that external validation every day to tell me that I'm worthy and I'm lovable and I'm desirable and that I matter, right? Not having that external validation every day. And instead I have to be that for myself, right? I have to get up in the morning and learn how to coach myself into believing that I'm worthy and lovable and valuable and powerful and creative and all this stuff, right? If I haven't, at least to a strong degree, developed that on my own, then I am going to rely on the relationship for that, and I will never develop that. I think it's important to say also that the more I rely on a relationship for that, at some point it becomes too much for the relationship and I lose the relationship. Because while conscious relationships are a beautiful space of love and support and companionship, and I'm not denying that, and it's a wonderful thing, and I'm not denying that. But if we don't have the capacity to do that for ourselves first, we can't expect someone else or something else to give us something that we haven't been willing and able to give ourselves. And I said earlier that the external is a reflection of the internal, right? When we become well adept at giving that to ourselves, then we will naturally manifest an external partner who will also want to give that to us, right? But that's a loving reflection of what's on the inside. It's not adding something to us that we're lacking. And so many of us are seeking a relationship to give us something that we're lacking. So I think learning how to be with your emotions, learning how to love yourself through those experiences, learning how to be your own advocate, learning how to be your own cheerleader, like learning how to, when everything else in your life falls away, like you can stand strong on your own 2 feet. I think that's one of the most important lessons that any human being can live in life or can learn in life. And I think it's important to say too, that just because a conscious relationship comes into your life doesn't mean it's always going to be there either. And there are many, many situations where they pass out of our lives for all different kinds of reasons, right? So at the end of the day, it really is you standing on your own 2 feet. And that's one of the most important things we can ever learn to develop in life. I think another thing is finding meaning and purpose in life. And I touched on this earlier. I touched on that, when I was in my early 20s and I was, in the misery of my life, and I was just seeking a relationship to come and make me happy and give me some excitement and some fulfillment. What I really wanted was an easy way to find meaning and purpose in my life. And meaning and purpose doesn't come easily, right? It's not something that is just given to us. It's something we create. It's something we, through searching our own soul, we find our meaning and our purpose, and then we bring that out into our lives. And I think something beautiful that we have the opportunity to do when we're single is ask ourselves, what is my meaning? What is my purpose? What am I on this planet for? Like, I'm not on this planet just to be obsessed with another human being. Like my greatness is too incredible to be diminished to that. Would you like to improve your meditation and hypnosis skills? If so, I want to share with you an app that I am absolutely falling in love with. It's called the Aura app, and truthfully, I have never seen so many mental health resources all available in one single place. You get access to meditations, hypnosis, breath work, sound healing, energy healing. Plus, you get access to coaches and therapists from all over the world. And you even get access to courses and programs ranging on everything from managing anxiety to navigating relationships. This is one of the best mental health apps I have ever found. I use it for myself. I use it for my students in my program. It is one of the most incredible tools, and I want to share it with you. The best news is right now you can try it completely free. So if you look in the description below wherever you're listening to this podcast, you will find a link to activate your free trial for the Aura app. In addition to that, you'll also receive a 25% discount on whatever membership option you do choose to activate. They're all pretty reasonable to begin with, but you'll get an additional 25% off by going through my link in the description. So what are you waiting for? Get moving, improving your meditation, hypnosis, and overall personal wellness. The Aura app is going to be an amazing tool in helping you do that, and you can get started absolutely free right now in the link below wherever you're listening to this podcast. So go check it out, and thanks for being here. So what is my meaning? What is my purpose? Outside of just partnering with someone and falling in love and living happily ever after, right? That could be a part of my purpose. And maybe that includes raising a family or children, and that can be a purpose for a lot of people. But is that the only reason I exist, or is there more? And so this season of our lives where we're by ourselves, where we don't have this external thing to focus on and to give our attention to and to think about all the time and to pour ourselves into, it causes us to ask deeper questions about life itself. And that's something that I don't take lightly, right? Like asking those kinds of questions are the kinds of questions that lead to true fulfillment in life. And then what I've seen is as you clarify your own meaning and your own purpose in life, then what starts to happen is you actually attract a partner who will be on board in that purpose with you. You attract a partner who will be in alignment with that purpose. Like the life and the partnership that you create, having done that work with yourself beforehand, you invite such a bigger vision into your life. It becomes so much more than it would have been if you hadn't done that first. Another thing, and I think this is maybe the most important, or if not the most important, it's up there, is you learn to open your heart and you develop a deep capacity for love. And this is something that I think is just, it's something that you can't do without going through some degree of hardship. And I mean, you all know the spoiled brat syndrome, right? Where it's just like the people who have had everything handed to them and they've never had to struggle for anything. They've never had to go through challenge. They've never had, right? Like they just have had everything handed to them, and they become these spoiled brats who just, they don't value anything. They don't appreciate anything. They're emotionally inept. They lack empathy. They're not sensitive. They're not kind, right? Because they haven't done the work to learn to open their heart and develop a deep and strong capacity for love. I think something that happens as we date and as we experience disappointment and as we experience heartbreak and we get excited and we get let down and we face rejection and we have to sometimes reject other people, and, going through all of this and being engaged with these experiences, it creates a depth of character. It creates a deep, compassionate heart that I think so much of the world is lacking. When we're always focused on the external, and I've been talking today about seeking a relationship externally, and that's one of the big things, but people put a lot of emphasis on seeking money externally. People put a lot of emphasis on acquiring status or fame or popularity or attention, right? People put a lot of emphasis on their physical body and making sure their physical body is perfect. And people put a lot of emphasis on the external world. And I'm not saying that all of those things are bad. They're definitely not. Like there's a lot of good in having an amazing career and having a healthy body, right? Like there's a lot of good in that. But when all the emphasis is on that, it creates a shallow human being. And so if you've been for most of your life putting all of your attention and all of your emphasis in the external world, and you've been chasing relationships, chasing money, chasing attention, chasing popularity, chasing, making sure you have the perfect body and all these external things, there's a part of your character that's not being developed in that. And let me say this. I think that dating and navigating relationships romantically is such a beautiful teacher, because on a regular basis, you come face to face with your own vulnerability and you come face to face with other people's vulnerability. You have to develop a strong degree of compassion for yourself and also for other people. And that is something that prepares you for a conscious relationship. I look back at all my past experiences, all my exes, all the people I dated, the ones that I rejected, the ones that rejected me, the ones I broke up with, the ones that broke up with me. I look back at all these experiences and I just have so much love for every single one of them. Like there's not a single person I resent. There's not a single person that I like criticize, like, oh, there's something wrong with them. Like none of that. I don't feel any of that for any of them. And even when it hurt me at times, it's like, thank you for giving me that experience to dive into my own pain. Because if you had not been that person who hurt me in that way, I would not know what it feels like to hurt like that. And then I wouldn't really be able to be there for my wife when she's hurting. Right? I would be disconnected from that. That is essential to having a conscious relationship. You got to have your heart broken a few times. You got to know what it feels like to suffer so that you can have enough empathy for your partner when they're suffering. That's something you can't learn just by getting everything you want all the time. That's something you only learn by not getting what you want. And so the people who broke my heart actually gave me a greater capacity to love. What seemed like something wrong was actually a gift. I was thinking about this morning. I remember a couple of instances where I'd say I was friend zoned, right? And I remember two specific instances where I had really years long friendships that were very close and very deep and very intimate, that not sexual, but just intimate, not romantic, but close and intimate. And one of them I'd say was a little more toxic than the other one. The reason I say that is because she was misleading and leading me to believe that something would happen while, never really having any intention. And then I got really clear about it when she introduced me to the guy that she wanted to date. And I was like, okay, I see what's going on here. And then the other person was somebody who was just very straightforward. She was honest with me about that she didn't want anything more than a friendship, but she was also honest about really wanting a friendship with me. And I said, let's be friends. And I chose to explore that friendship. And it was a beautiful, deep friendship that lasted for many years. And we were very, very close. Each of these relationships, each of these friendships, gave me the opportunity to experience that kind of closeness and intimacy with a woman without needing more than that, right? Without needing it to be about sex, or without needing it to be about romance, or without needing it to be about validating my own ego and giving me, the attention that I was wanted or needed, right? Like it was just simply about being intimate and being connected and loving a person without any selfishness involved in that. In those experiences, like I got to see like all my stuff come up and my insecurity and like, oh, well, why don't they want me? Like, what's wrong with me? And like, I got to work through all of that and still be a friend, like a genuine friend to these people. And I say all of that to say that those are incredible experiences of growth that if they had just given me what I wanted from them, I never would have experienced that growth. Those are experiences that gave me a greater capacity for love that I never would have had if I just got what I wanted. And so many of us are going through this dating thing, like so myopically, thinking I want something, and whenever I don't get it, it's a loss. Whenever I don't get it, it's a problem. Whenever I don't get it, it sucks. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, like, give yourself permission to experience how beautiful each of these things are. And you opening yourself up in that way is actually going to give you a greater capacity for love when the conscious relationship you're looking for does come into your life. It's important that we experience all of it. And it's important that we experience all of it with an open heart, that we let it touch us, that we don't wall ourselves off against it and be like, oh, well, screw them. It doesn't matter. They're losers anyway. Oh, like, we have all these mechanisms of protection that we put on to try to shield ourselves from the intense vulnerability that we experience. And when we try to shield ourselves from that vulnerability, what happens is we close off our capacity for love altogether. We become shallow. And then relationships for us simply become a space of, am I getting what I want? And when I get what I want, I say I'm happy. And when I don't get what I want, I say I'm not happy. But let me tell you, 7 years with my wife now, it involves a lot of both. It involves a lot of getting what I want and also not getting what I want. And that's not a bad thing. That's beautiful. That's what marriage is like. That's what partnership is like. But if I didn't have the awareness and the capacity to accept that, I couldn't be in a relationship like this. I want to touch a little bit on Stephanie's journey that I shared about earlier. And yes, I'm going to share the interview in a couple weeks here on the podcast. But I just want to touch on some of the things she shared, because I thought what she expressed was such a beautiful example of what I'm talking about, of really focusing on this internal journey. And so just to give you some background on how I know her, and she's someone I met through a personal development program probably 10 years ago, something like that. And then I coached her for a little while. She was having some troubles with different guys she was dating, and I coached her for a couple of months, and then we stopped coaching. And then, we would kind of keep in touch. She'd reach out to me every now and then, let me know what was going on with her. And, she joined like our Facebook community, and she'd give updates and things. So we kind of kept in touch over the years. And later she ended up joining the Inspired Love program. And in week 10 of the Inspired Love program, that's when her now partner, that they're planning their life together and all of this, called her up and said, hey, I want to come visit you, and sparked their whole relationship. But back when I knew her, when I lived in South Florida and she was in this program and where we kind of met, she was very much, and she'll share this in her interview, I'm not sharing anything that she doesn't share herself, but she was very much in this place of kind of chasing love and, trying to find someone and trying to get love, right, and be loved, and very much in that kind of way I've been talking about of, I just want someone to love me. I want someone to make my life better. I want someone to make me happy. And she experienced just a lot of attracting guys who didn't respect her and treated her like shit and would, be like, oh, all Mr. Perfect one day. And then the next day she finds out he's hanging out with some other girl. And, she attracted a lot of this kind of stuff. And she got to a place where she was like, you know what? I'm just done. Like, I don't even care anymore. I'm just going to let my love life take care of itself. And I'm going to focus on me. And she has 2 sons. She's a single mother, 2 sons, and she took her sons and she moved from South Florida to California. She bought a piece of land and she just decided to work on opening this retreat center. And really she became kind of like a hermit. She lives out in the sticks in California, in Northern California, up in the mountains. And she has this little piece of land and she's building this retreat center and living with her sons and just creating this really simple life and getting to know herself. And she even shared with me during that period that she started exploring open relationships. And I'm not necessarily saying that you should explore open relationships, but let me say this, I went through a period where I did that. And I realized, same as Stephanie, that it wasn't what I ultimately wanted in my life. I ultimately wanted a committed monogamous relationship, but same as her, it was one of the most incredible periods of growth of my life, because I allowed myself to engage in relationship with people without needing more from them, right? Just for the experience of sharing love with each other, just for the experience of being with each other without needing it to be more than that. And it's the same thing that she reported in her experience was she's like, I started focusing on myself, my kids. I let go of this need to be in a relationship. I just started exploring relationships openly, when it was available, when it felt right. I allowed myself to just go there with people when it felt in alignment, without any expectation, without needing it to be more than that. And she calls me one night and, she's been she was sharing with me about all her experiences and, all the different kinds of things she'd been through. And I shared with her that, I said, I went through a very similar period of exploring open relationships. And I just got to a point where I got clear that wasn't really what I wanted. And she's like, I think I'm feeling the same thing. I think I'm starting to get clear that that's not what I want either. And that was about the time she joined the Inspired Love program. But I'm saying all this to say that she let go, right? It was like, I'm done. I'm done trying. I'm done forcing. I'm done fighting. I'm done being desperate. I'm done waiting for someone to come into my life and make it better. I'm going to be the one who's going to come into my life and make it better. I'm not going to attach to someone they need to do something for me. I'm going to be that for myself. And this wasn't a short period. I mean, we're talking about maybe a period of 5 years. This is a significant amount of time that she did this. And then this was last year that she calls me up and we had this conversation and I said, hey, why don't you join the Inspired Love program? It might be a great place for you to kind of clarify what you're looking for and get clear about the kind of partner you want to have and the kind of life you want to create. And she did. And in week 10 of the program, her now partner calls her up and, hey there, if you've made it this far in the episode, then I want to jump in with a special invitation for you. You've probably heard me mention Inspired Love at least once or twice on the show, and Inspired Love is my private coaching program. It's the culmination of over 15 years of healing work, and we have recently reopened the program for enrollment. Through an in-depth exploration in all 4 dimensions of human experience, that's body, mind, emotion, and spirit, the process allows you to bring balance to anxious, avoidant, or disorganized patterns, to heal and somatically release childhood trauma, to grow spiritually, and to approach intimate relationships from a healthy, emotionally regulated, and secure place. Our students commonly report that they have never seen anything quite this comprehensive. While many teachers offer courses to improve relationship skills or heal insecure attachment styles, it's rare to find something that works in all dimensions of your being. And I specifically designed the program this way because in my experience, any true healing process must address all of these elements to have any real chance of success. I know what it feels like to crave love on the deepest levels while simultaneously feeling unworthy or hopeless around it. I know the fear of struggling in relationships and doubting they will ever work out for you. I watched my mother suffer in and out of 4 abusive marriages. I have 4 sisters and I've watched them struggle. I've been through it myself. I know that lack of love can be one of the most painful and lonely experiences. And I created this program because I know a way out of that, and I'm inspired to share it with others. Now, I don't know if this is the right thing for you or not. What I do know is it's changed the lives of so many people, and it continues to do so on a weekly basis. So if you're ready for a big change in your love life, and you're ready to get the most out of your life overall and stop wasting time, in the description below this episode, you can book a free call with another graduate of the program. She can tell you how it's changed her life and share how it might be helpful for you. If it feels right, jump in with us. If not, don't. But don't ignore this opportunity when it could make all the difference in the world for you. Go ahead, book your free intro call at the link in the description, and thanks for listening today. It's also just a really interesting thing to note is that this person who called her up was someone that she had friend zoned. Right. It was someone that she had, said was like a best friend kind of person, and that, she wasn't really attracted to him, but, she would talk to him about her guy problems and things like that. And then he calls her up in week 10 of Inspired Love and says, "Hey, I'd like to come visit you." And she's like, "Yeah, come on out." He makes it there, and suddenly she sees him in a completely different light. And she's like, "Oh my God, like, why haven't I seen you like this before?" Well, she couldn't see him like that when she was operating from a different place. Because as much as she might have said that she wanted that kind of relationship, she didn't want that kind of relationship. She wanted the kind of relationship that she was chasing. These guys that were hot and cold, these guys that didn't give her the time of day. This person she called a friend who was there for her and who was secure, and she wasn't into him. She didn't want that quality of relationship. She wanted the intensity and the will it happen or won't it happen, and why aren't I enough for them? And that's what she was chasing. She was chasing those kinds of experiences. And I'm not picking on her because I've done it and we all have. Right. So, I'm just using her as an example of what we all do. It's nothing about her. I wanted to share a little bit about that. And I'm really excited to share the full interview because I think this is such a perfect example of how this journey works. And I want to say that it's really more than anything a journey of spiritual growth. It's like everything I've talked about today this is a spiritual conversation. This is a conversation of becoming the most complete and full version of yourself and manifesting a relationship that is a reflection of that most complete and full version of yourself. If you're wondering why the kinds of relationships you attract seem to be fragmented and incomplete and lacking longevity and lacking real potential to become something or go somewhere, if you're wondering why relationship continues to show up for you that way, it's because you're approaching it from a fragmented place. And so the reflection is showing you that the fragmentedness. It's showing you the incompleteness that you're expressing in yourself. Now, the last thing I want to say today is I want to bridge the gap between the internal and the external. Because yes, I'm talking a lot about how internal is most important. You really don't have to worry about losing anything. You can stop and focus on yourself and take any amount of time for yourself, and that will all work itself out in perfect timing. But that doesn't mean that there's nothing to do externally. And so I do want to talk about bridging the internal and the external. In the Inspired Love program, we talk about it in 3 ways. When I talk about true compatibility in the program, I say there are 3 criteria, and that's vision, values, and velocity. Vision is that you share a common vision, right? Like if you're going to build a long-term life together, you share that common vision for the future. You share that common vision for your life. It doesn't have to be identical. Of course, you can have some things that are yours, they can have some things that are theirs. It doesn't have to be identical. But it does have to be common. It does have to be enough that you could both be happy with generally a lot of the same things. If you have a vision for your life and someone else has a completely different vision for their life, you might love that person deeply. You might love each other deeply, but the compatibility really isn't there. If you want to have a home and a family and wake up together and spend your evenings together, and that person wants to be gone every week, traveling the world, doing this or doing that, that's incompatible. One or both of you is going to have to make a sacrifice that you are not happy with. That's incompatible. And so there needs to be a common vision. There needs to be common values. What does that mean? Well, I'll use myself and my wife for an example. We both value spirituality. We both value living in a beautiful home. We both value personal growth. We both value deep conversation. We both value spending time together on a regular basis. We both value having a family, and that's something we're working on. Right? We share these common values. And values are really, when you think about it, it's what's important to you? When you think about life as a whole, and I always say life is like a buffet. It's got everything. You want murder, death, and violence, it's got that. You want love and peace and beauty, it's got that, right? Life is a buffet. It's got everything. And it's up to us to pick from the buffet what we want. And your values are the things that you pick off the buffet. And so there's got to be a commonality in values. You got to want to pick a lot of the same things off the buffet. Because if you don't, then you're always going to want different things. So vision, common vision for the future. Values. You want a lot of the same things in life. A lot of the same things are important to both of you. And velocity is the timeline in which you're ready to move forward. So a lot of people meet someone and they're the vision's there, the values are there, but they're going through a divorce and they're just not ready to commit yet. Or they're really focused on their career right now and they're not going to be ready for a serious relationship for a couple more years. And the question is always, should I wait? Should I wait? Should I wait? You should never wait. You should never wait for someone. And here's why. And it doesn't matter how amazing the person is. You should never wait for someone, because when you wait for someone, what you're saying is the things that are important to them are more important than the things that are important to you. If you give someone that in a relationship, you're establishing in the relationship a kind of inequality that will cause the person to lose respect for you. Because something we need to feel from our partner is that they have a strong sense of self-respect. And self-respect means that I value the things that are important to me and I'm not compromising on them. I mean, of course, and I want to say this, you may compromise in small ways where I think healthy relationships do involve a degree of compromise. You might compromise for the day or for the week, but you're not compromising for years. Because that creates an inequality in the relationship where you make someone else's dreams more important than your own. So vision, values, and velocity. This is the external work. Now, even a lot of that is internal, right? Because you got to know what your vision is, you got to know what your values are, and you got to know the velocity that you're ready to move forward on. If you haven't done the important internal work to really clarify those things, to know where you stand on those things, and when I talk about standing on those things, I'm talking about a stake in the ground, I'm not wavering. Again, and when I say not wavering, of course, there's a healthy degree of compromise and patience and understanding within reason, within a matter of maybe weeks or months, but not years. The external work, once again, is a reflection of the internal work, because what's going to happen is you're going to be in the dating world and you're going to meet someone who does not share your vision. And you're going to like them, you're going to be attracted to them, the sex is going to be hot, everything's going to be great, but they're not going to share your vision. And if you haven't done the internal work, if you're still so full of insecurity and so much needing to have that person in your life, if you're still filled with all of that, you're going to compromise your vision for the relationship. That's going to lead to an inequality. It's going to create disrespect. Same thing goes with values. Same thing goes with velocity. And the internal work is about becoming such a strong presence in and of your own right that you attract what is in alignment with that and repel things that are not in alignment with that. There is this intermediate phase between when you've done a lot of the internal work to where you're really clear about your vision, you're really clear about your values, you're really clear about your velocity. And then you're ready to put it out in the world. You're ready to call in that partner. You're ready to attract that relationship. And then what happens from that point is your commitment is going to be tested. And you're going to meet people who don't share your vision, who don't share your values, or who don't share the velocity. And I say this is kind of like the final test. This is like the final test to see if you really, really want what you say you want. Or if you're going to compromise yourself to accommodate for someone else and just keep them in your life. And if you fail that test, the truth is you're simply not ready for a conscious relationship. When you surrender what you want to accommodate for someone else, your statement to the universe is that, well, I don't believe I can have it. I don't believe I'm worth it. I don't believe I'm lovable enough that somebody would want to meet me there and give me that, or on and on and on, some version of that. So it's so important that we pass that final test. One of the most powerful statements you can ever make in your journey for love is to walk away from what you don't want. And I say this as somebody who has done it. I've had several relationships. I like what comes to mind is four that I'm thinking of. There may be more, but four that are really prominent in my mind. 4 relationships with people that were great, fun, attractive, cool to be around. But at the end of the day, it wasn't what I truly wanted in my soul. And I'm not even saying I did it perfectly. Like, yes, there was a degree of, is there a way to make it work? Maybe I can try again. Maybe if we just have another conversation, or if we just talk it out, or if we just do this or that or the other thing. Like, I mean, there's a degree of like trying everything, right? But at the end of the day, really accepting that my greatest joy, my greatest happiness, my greatest fulfillment is not in this relationship. And choosing to let it go. And like I said, I've done that 4 times that I can think of in significant ways prior to meeting my wife. You know, I love to look at the little miracles and things, but I've often shared this, or I've definitely shared it before, is that I connected with my wife for the first time the day after I did that for the last time. Like it was like that night I ended a relationship that was not in my highest truth, that was not what I really wanted. And the next day was when I connected with my wife for the first time. That was the first day of the 8 years that we've been together now, 7.5, something like that. I say this to say that it's so important to do the internal work, to know where you stand, to know what you're creating, to be intentional about what you're creating, so that when something shows up in your life, you know whether or not it's what you're looking for. And you're not always going to know instantly. There may be a process of figuring it out. And like I said, maybe trying different things, and that's valid. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. But at the end of the day, when you've tried everything and you're clear that, no, this is not the relationship for me, you've got to walk away from it. And you walking away from it is a statement to the universe that says, I know that I am worthy of what I want. I know that I can have it. I know that it's possible. I know that it's out there. I know that there's somebody in the world who would share the same desires that I have. And I know that I can find that person. And I believe that if I do my part, that, I will be given that. Like, that is a powerful statement. That is just as powerful as a statement as it is to give up what you want to try to keep someone else. Both of those things are very powerful statements. And so as I close out today's episode, I just want to leave you with a couple of really important ideas. And the first one is that if you've ever heard the acronym for fear, false evidence appearing real, I think it's one of my favorite things, one of the best things I've ever heard, because that is what fear is. And our minds are filled with fear. And your mind tells you you're running out of time. Your mind tells you that it's never going to happen. Your mind tells you that if you lose this person, you'll have nothing else. Your mind tells you all these things. And what I want to just leave you with today is that fear is actually false evidence appearing real. And the fear that you have in your mind is going to fill your body with anxiety, and it's going to make you feel like you have to settle. It's going to make you feel like you have to diminish yourself. It's going to make you feel like you have to do all these awful things in order to be loved. And I want to invite you to challenge any idea of fear. Any idea that you have to limit or diminish yourself in any way. Any idea that it can't happen unless you do X, Y, or Z, like any idea that you're running out of time, or any idea, like, you can never lose anything by doing the right thing for yourself. But the real way to lose time is to continually spin your wheels in cycles that perpetually go nowhere. It's funny, we don't lose time by putting our dating life on hold and really focusing on ourselves and our internal journey and getting clear about our truth and the most powerful way that we can live our personal lives. We never lose time when we do that. But chasing one dead-end cycle after another over and over and over again for years, people waste their entire lives doing that. And then ultimately just settle in some dead-end relationship because they think that's the best they can have. So I want to encourage you to be courageous enough to take a different path. Be courageous enough to take the conscious path, the path that most people that are driven by their fear and insecurity are unwilling to take. That's the path to miracles. That's the path where things start to happen in your life where you go, oh my, like, I can't even believe what's happening. Like the experiences I'm having are blowing my mind because they're just so outside the norm of what I'm used to. That's the way there. So I want to leave you with that today, and sending so much love to all of you. I know, as always, I say that this journey is sometimes the most challenging journey of our lives, right? This journey is sometimes causes us to confront our greatest fears, our greatest vulnerabilities, what we may think are our greatest weaknesses and our inadequacies. But it's only through going to those dark places that we become the most extraordinary version of who we could be. And when we avoid those things, we just limit ourselves and our capacity in every area of our life. So I want to leave you with that today. Thank you so much for being with me. Lots of love and blessings, everybody. And I'll be back with you next Tuesday. Take care. Bye. Thanks again for checking out the show. Please subscribe on whatever platform you listen to podcasts on the most. And I would love it so much if you leave a review and tell people what you think of us. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram @TheLivingRelationship to connect more closely. And I'm grateful to be supporting you on your journey to love.